Somebody had talked to me the other day and mentioned that they assumed with rates where they're at, which I wouldn't think that would be a big deal with this, and the economy where it's at, they assumed $1 million plus homes were not moving. Stay tuned and we're going to take a look.
You better get fired up.
All right, baby. Today we're going to look at the big buck homes, the $1 million plus homes. We want to see if they're moving or have they stalled completely. Now, typically, I tell people that 3 to 4 months of inventory is a pretty neutral market. Anything under 3 months is going to be a seller's market. Anything over 4 months is going to be a buyer's market. And the more it expands from that 3 to 4 month period, the crazier of a buyer's or seller's market it ends up being, right? And every market is different. I can look up PSL as a whole, and it's going to be completely different than a specific HOA or a specific price point or homes on the river. So when I'm talking to a seller in Port St. Lucie, I mean, this is almost 300,000 people here. There are such different, I wanted to use the word demographics, but I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about housing. There are such different housing demographics that you've got to look at that specific price point area, whatever the major feature of the home is, before you look into inventory, because it can be drastically different for different types of homes, even within the same city. So today we're going to look at $1 million plus homes, but I want to stress this. First of all, let's talk about what inventory is. How do you calculate it? You look at how many homes are currently on the market, and then you look at how many had sold in a certain period of time. I usually look at 3 months, right? Today we're going to look at 3 months. If there's 100 homes for sale and there's 100 that sold in the last 3 months, then you know at the pace we've sold at in the last 3 months, assuming we don't list any new homes and we only have the current 100 that are on the market, it would take us exactly 3 months to sell out of those homes. So we've got 3 months of inventory. If there's 200 actives, only 100 have sold in the last 3 months. That means we've got 6 months of inventory. Now we moved from a neutral market, almost a seller's market, into a pretty good buyer's market, right? Just by having 200 listings instead of 100. So we're going to take a look at that with 100 million, with $1 million plus homes. Now I will say this: $1 million homes are a little bit different, because those homes, you've got to remember, there's only going to be so many sales of $1 million homes in Port St. Lucie in a given year. I don't know how many there are, and there's going to be more because they're coming up. But I know when I looked this up 2, 3, 4 years ago, there might be 30, 40, 50 sales all year long that were in the seven figures in this 250 to 300,000 person town. It's probably more now, but I would be surprised if it's over 100. We're going to see. I'd be surprised if it's over 100. And so when you're a $1 million plus buyer, those homes are also drastically different. I live in Bedford Park. There's only so many floor plans here. The smallest home I think is probably 1,700 and square feet, 1,700 and some square feet, assuming you're looking at a single family home. And the biggest, I don't even think is over maybe 2,800 square feet. You can have a pool or not a pool. You could be on the canal or not on the canal. You might be updated or not updated, but there's nothing with a helipad. There's nothing with 7 acres, right? You're not going to see the 2 stories with a loft and they've got, a stone wall coming down the 2-story wall. Like, you're not going to see any of that. It's going to be pretty similar in here. And so all of the homes, if you're interested in one home, but it's not for sale, you might go look at another home that is for sale. And it's not quite what you want, but it's close. With $1 million homes, they're so drastically different. Some of the homes are average. They're okay, but they're on a beautiful part of the St. Lucie River. Now it's $1 million home, right? Or it might be a plain Jane home. I sold one of these for $1 million. Plain Jane home built by a major, I would say average to below. When I say below average builder, I mean they just pump out houses. They're not looking at quality. They're not looking at, custom things that you want. They just want to pump out houses. But it was a massive house, so it's over $1 million, right? There's other homes where it's a tiny little lot and there's no water features, nothing special about the lot, but the house is big and the house is drizzled in amenities. Boom, it's $1 million, $2 million. Okay. So there's a lot of differences because there's so many differences that inventory is almost always going to be higher. You're probably looking at 7 to 9 months typically. So I usually tell higher price sellers, you're not looking at selling in 2 to 3 months like a normal seller would. It doesn't mean you can't, you certainly can, but on average, it's going to take you longer just because of the price point and the amount of buyers that we've got in this buyer pool. So when you see those higher numbers, don't think that the market has just plummeted. I would say, 7 to 9 months is pretty normal. If we're looking at 10 plus months, then yeah, it is a buyer's market. If we're looking at under 7 months, maybe it's a hot market in that price range. So let's get in and take a look here. I'm going to screen share. That was a lot of lead up. The old Joe Rosen School of Real Estate here. All right, so we're going to come in right now. We're looking at the MLS, and we're going to come into Port St. Lucie, and we're going to look at. Well, let's look at actives first, and we're going to look at. I'm not even going to narrow it down. Sometimes I'll look at single-family homes only. Here, we're going to include townhomes, condos. Well, it doesn't matter if it's $1 million. Let's take a look at it, and we're going to go list price $1 million. Now, it doesn't mean it's worth $1 million, but you can see right here 76, and you can see here too. A lot of them are along the river. That doesn't surprise me at all. And a lot of them are on the west side of 95, predominantly in PGA. I don't know what communities these are, but I'm going to guess Riverland, maybe Del Webb, some of the tradition communities down here. Doesn't surprise me at all. So we've got 76 for sale. Let's look at how many have sold in the last, we'll go 6 months. Oh, what are you doing, Joe? Sold. I'm going to go the last year. Okay, we're at last year. So we've got 63 that sold in the last year. I said I was guessing it would probably be somewhere in the, what I say, 40, 50 range. So it's a little bit more than I thought, which I kind of assumed. We're building higher priced homes now, right? But when we look at the last 6 months, I'm going to change this from February to August. We got 32, okay? So if we're selling 32 in a 6-month period, but we've got 76, multiply that by 6 months, you're looking at 14 and a quarter months of inventory on $1 million homes. All right. Now we could even go a little bit further. Let's go to 9 months. Maybe the market's changed in the last 3 months, right? We've got 18. 76 divided by 18 times 3 months. Okay, now if you look at the last 3 months, we've got a little over 12 months inventory. So it looks like 4 to 6 months ago, maybe properties weren't selling as much, right? But now we're starting to see it a little bit more. So the market's actually getting a little bit warmer, but still, I would say that's quite a bit of inventory. Is it a strong buyer's market? No, it's not a strong buyer's market. Is it a buyer's market? Yes, it is probably a buyer's market at that price point. And I don't think that with every single price point. If you guys watch this specifically on Wednesdays when I do the market update, you'll see a lot of the communities that I go through, a lot of the price points that I go through, or a lot of the specific upgrades or amenities like a pool or waterfront or whatever it is. A lot of them will have 3 to 4 months of inventory. 12 months is a lot, even for $1 million plus. I will say though, it's a different breed of people. Typically, and I'm generalizing, this isn't going to be true all the time. When you're looking at somebody in the 3 to 450 range, right? 300,000 to 450,000, those people typically have a need to sell. I need to sell because I can't afford it. I need to sell because I got a job in Tennessee. I need to sell because we're getting divorced. There's a little bit more motivation, and they tend to take offers a little bit quicker compared to the $1 million plus seller. That seller typically doesn't need to sell as often. Some of them do, but typically they don't need to sell as often. They'll wait for their number. They typically won't always take the first offer. There's a lot more negotiating. Is that true always? No, not always. It's just generally speaking more correlational. So it's two different markets. So I would say right now, if you are a seller in the $1 million plus range and you need to sell, you might be in for an awakening when it comes to what your values are compared to maybe a year or two if you've been watching the market. If you are $1 million plus and you can wait, I wouldn't be overly concerned. It's not that much of a buyer's market where I'd be that concerned. But again, 12, 13 months of inventory right now. So just be aware you might not sell your home in a 6-month contract. It might take 8, 10, 12, 14 months to sell your house. And it depends on how realistic you are with pricing as well, right? As a buyer, I would say, even though I'm saying what I'm saying with the higher priced sellers, you're going to find 10, 20, maybe 30% of sellers at that price point have a high enough motivation. Well, they'll wheel and deal, right? I've seen $1 million homes asking prices sell for high eights. I've seen 1.7s sell for 1.4. I've seen a 1.4 sell for 1.2. Those are hundreds of thousands of dollars off. I don't see $600,000 homes selling for 400. I mean, once or twice a year in the MLS, can I go and find a needle in a haystack? Sure. But that's not something I experience regularly. But to see a 1.7 sell for 1.5, it's not that crazy. It's a different price point. When you look at it as a percentage, it's different. It's the same. 200 grand off on a 1.7 is the same as 100 grand off on an 850 percentage wise, which is the same as 50 grand off on a 4.25. It's aggressive. It's really aggressive, but it's not unheard of, right? You see it every once in a while. So guys, hopefully this was helpful. If you've got another area of the market that you'd like me to look at, again, whether it's a price point, a specific neighborhood, maybe your HOA, certainly let me know. And next Wednesday, I'd be happy to do it. Thanks for joining me. We're here every single Wednesday at 11 o'clock. You guys have a great week. Take care.